Hello, Internet! Today I wanted to talk about a concept called visionary fiction, which is something that I've been reading about in Adrienne Marie Brown's books, Emergent Strategy and Pleasure Activism. It's a really interesting concept to me. It's this sort of idea that like science fiction can act as like a blueprint for the future, that sort of in order to do something, humanity must first sort of put it into our consciousness that that is something that can be done, or something that possibly could be done. Um, and the idea is that sort of science fiction and activism are like can be the same thing. Like um you can create a sort of science fiction vision of a better future for humanity, and then like we can move towards that future using this sort of visionary fiction as like a blueprint for what we would want things to look like. And I think a lot of people have experienced something like this with like Star Trek. The idea of like Star Trek, I think I haven't seen a ton of it, but my understanding is that it takes place in like a post-capitalist like world where humanity sort of moved beyond this individualistic model and is sort of exploring out its full potential now that it's living sort of fully cooperatively. And that potential is taking it to space and seeing all of these different sort of endless possibilities. Um, but I also think that the concept doesn't necessarily have to be applied to exclusively science fiction writing. Like, we could just, like, I think a step in activism is just being like, here is what we want. Here is what we want to move towards. Um, so, with that in mind, I was thinking I might make kind of like a series of videos around, like, what would I like the world to look like? Um, just so that it's not just this constant, like, capitalism bad, like, telling people that capitalism is bad doesn't really, like, how do you, how do you do a don't, is this phrase, right? Like, like, what do they do with this information that capitalism is bad? How, like, what direction does that tell people to move in? It's like, you gotta move, or like the thing that's happening right now is bad. We need to change it, but it's not like putting forward sort of an alternative, positive model for like what could be better. Um, and I think when we're able to touch into that model of like, oh, what would it be like for our needs to be met? Then you're coming from sort of this place of like holding care for those human needs that are being met with these tragic strategies because that's what we have available to us under our current system. But it's like holding that with a lot of care as we sort of move towards something else. Um, and another way to hold those needs with even more care. um, so I've found this to be a really interesting kind of thought experiment for myself, and I'd encourage other people to try this out and just think about like what what could exist. Um, and here, I'll give you an example. This will kick off my video series on it. It's a video I've been wanting to make for a while, actually. And that is um, Magic the Gathering, and like what could Magic the Gathering look like in a post-capitalist society? um, so what sort of inspired me on that one, or to think about that, was I had done I've done a few different like Magic the Gathering card design contests in my life, and I really love the sort of uh just sifting through all of the different submissions and seeing like what creative and interesting designs Magic fans come up with. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much creativity, there's so much potential in this game, and I really find myself longing for more people to have opportunities to be supported in the art of making Magic the Gathering cards. Like, I mean, yes, the art, like literally the artwork, but also like the artistry of crafting cards and designing mechanics and like play testing to fine tune all of the things. Like, I think it's um, such a cool avenue of like self expression, uh, and I really wish that I had more support and more opportunities to do that. Like I've dabbled in card design. I like make a lot of designs, or I just sort of like write down ideas for cards, but like I don't haven't generally gotten them like printed because there's a lot of logistical obstacles in the way. Also potentially legality. Not quite sure like what the legality of proxies are, and like custom proxies versus regular proxies. I don't know. Regardless, um, the easier it is to do a thing, the more people will do that thing, right? So I want to be able to support people like me and other people in the Magic the Gathering card design community, and I wish that there were more opportunities to do card design and have your cards be realized and played with. I think that'd be awesome. Like, imagine if there was like a modular press at like a library where you could just go and print Magic the Gathering cards, of like your own custom designs. Like like the computer code to make printing stuff happen for Magic cards already exists in the world, right? That problem has been addressed. So it's not even like you would need new software or anything. It's like you just, if we didn't have like trademark issues, and if we could secure like funding for that kind of thing, or like communities that are willing to sort of, I guess, pay for that or organize that, I think that'd be really cool. And I also think like that strategy of decentralizing the production of Magic cards would be good in a lot of other ways too. Like, I think it could lead to like localized pockets of metagames all over the world in really unique and interesting ways, where like people could like get together and uh-oh, I just got a error message on my phone. So, one moment, please. So, change of plans. My phone overheated from sitting out in the sun. So, instead, we are going to finish this video by taking a little walk through the woods. Anyways, localized metagames of Magic the Gathering in a post-apocalyptic society, I believe is what we were talking. No, not post-apocalyptic, post-capitalist. Although, I mean, the apocalypse and capitalism kind of intertwine. There's a joke there. Okay. Anyways. Oh, yeah, I think that like you could have some really interesting effects in terms of like people, like standard and modern and pioneer and historic, like all of those formats can still exist. So there would be no reason that those would go away, and like there could be a more sort of democratic way of navigating those formats. Like players could like take votes on whether cards should be banned or whatnot. But then they would also open up room for like totally localized pockets of metagames where, there's just like a small group of friends at a card shop can just make like a totally custom cube. Like, how awesome would that be? Like, you can do that now, but oh boy, is it a lot of work. Like, you'd have to print out hundreds of proxies and cut everything up and sleeve it up, and then, like, if I don't know, if there were just like a card press that anyone could just have access to, and you could, like, you could have like rules around, how often people get to use it or whatever. You could take, say like, oh, each person can print 500 cards a year or something, right? Like, it's not like printing, people wanting too many Magic cards would be a problem that doesn't already exist, because we have so many Magic cards that are just sitting in shoe boxes right now. Like, the whole way we distribute Magic cards right now is kind of feels silly to me. Like, it involves a lot of plastic waste. It involves like gambling incentive mechanics, and like it involves a lot of extra cards that like players who are really invested in Magic the Gathering will often end up with like 20 copies of each common or whatever that they just like don't really care about, and it sits in a shoebox for forever. And it's like, we don't have to print those if that's what's gonna happen. Like, we can change the way we distribute these. We can just print the ones we want, or we can have better ways of recycling them is another thing. Like, we could also just have like public Magic the Gathering card libraries. Like, why don't libraries have a Magic the Gathering card section? That'd be awesome. So, anyways, that's just kind of some of my thoughts on how Magic the Gathering could be sort of improved in a post-capitalist society. And thanks for listening to me. Hope you have a lovely day, and if you're in a place where there's nice weather, I hope you enjoy the weather.